Thank you to the New Farm and District Historical Society for asking me to speak today. I do enjoy coming out about once a month to talk to different groups about the history of policing. And in this way, I can illustrate to you the sort of collections and objects and information that we have in the Police Museum. I have been there a very long time, and packing prehistoric dinosaur bones, actually not dinosaurs, animal bones, was not the weirdest thing I did at the Queensland Museum. But you'll have to ask me back for that particular story. All right, so I thought of this title after Desley asked me for a title, because I didn't know whether you called this a peninsula or whether technically it is, but I do like the alliteration. So we are going to be talking about policing the peninsula. So I'll be looking at obviously New Farm and Fortitude Valley, but I'll actually be going from Fortitude Valley out to the end. As we go through, you'll find there's some things that I actually don't know about policing in New Farm, mostly in New Farm. I know more about the Valley than I do about New Farm. So anybody can answer my questions today or afterwards, or you want to email us and let us know the information, that'd be fantastic, but I'll let you know when we get to those points. So let's just briefly talk about policing North Brisbane, which is what this area was known, right back in the day. We're talking about the 1840s forwards. And I don't know whether it's just me and my terrible research capabilities, but it was very hard to find an early map of Brisbane that actually includes all of New Farm. This one, for example, kind of cuts off the end, and that's mostly what I found was they got so far. You got the valley, you always got the valley, but they never quite got to the other end of New Farm. If anybody's found one, an early map of New Farm, I'd love to, and that shows the end of New Farm, I'd love to see it. All right. So some of you may or might not know that at 196 Arthur Street in the Valley is this little house, and it is an early constable's house. Now, I only know that because that was what was reported in the newspaper back in the 80s when it was sold for a considerable amount of money. It's ridiculously hard to get a photo of because of the big hedges in the front. In fact, has anybody walked down Arthur Street and attempted to find this little building? You can't even get a good shot from the street just because the house is too close to the hedges. Back in 2016, I did a New Farm and Fortitude Valley police walk, and we were going past this little cottage, and the owner was out in the garden, and he said, "Would you like to come in?" Ooh, woohoo. So the actual constable's house, I didn't feel comfortable actually taking photos in their home, is really just the one room. And they've built this very lovely house kind of all the way out the back. It's quite a long and skinny home. But apart from letting us in, he also let us out onto the balcony, because I think if you look, I think it's 198, next door, that house actually has a very early police lockup as part of the house, which is also ridiculously hard to get a photograph of. And one day I might actually go and knock on the door and ask whether I can go in and have a look at it. Now, having told you that these two buildings are actually there in Arthur Street, that's it. That's all I know about those buildings. I did a deep dive into the early data we have about police officers in Brisbane in the 40s and 1850s, but I can't really tie anyone to the building. And I can't also, when I did a bit of a dive into Trove, and isn't that a great way to spend your afternoon? Looking for anything that happened in Arthur Street or that mentioned constables in Arthur Street, but I didn't find anything else there either, unfortunately. All right, let's talk about... So there's been currently where the Fortitude Valley Police Station is, on the corner of Brooks Street and Wickham. Is that Wickham Street? I get my streets confused in the Valley. Where that building is and the new PCYC building are, that has been police presence since about 1863. in some way or other. And this little, it's actually only part of the whole inquiry. In 1887, there was a Board of Inquiry into jails, and the one in the valley was called a police jail, but it was actually specifically a women's jail. And this report talked about, you can read it there, the state it was in. By the time we got to 1887, there was some scathing information about all the jails in Brisbane and the conditions that the prisoners were kept at that time. We will come back to this. All right. So let me use my little pointer here. There we go. So this is where that jail was. At that point, and there's been a few changes over time in regard to what was there. It was called the police jail, although it's tricky to know exactly how many police were actually in there. And I do have information about across Brook Street, on the other side of Brook Street, there was a police barracks there. But again, I'm going to have to when I retire, I'm going to have to go in a bit deeper down and see whether I can actually find where that was specifically located. And then hopefully we have a volunteer who's currently writing and finding names of early police officers, so ones that were in Brisbane pre-1864. So hopefully we can get a bit closer to knowing who was who back in the day. All right, so now we're going to be, that was kind of North Brisbane, so once we become Fortitude Valley. Now Ray Thurlow, who I understand, is he a member? He does, no? He's here, where is Ray? Oh, there you are, thanks Ray, nice to see you. I've used some of your information because Ray contacted me about where the first Fortitude Valley police stations were, and we did have a bit of a tic-tac, and he wrote a great history. So I'm not one for reinventing the wheel. So when I'm, get a bit busy at work. So thank you, Ray. This map does my head in because normally, see that's Kangaroo Point up there, Fortitude Valley, and that's that police area that we were talking about before. But just the way it's oriented, my brain doesn't quite appreciate it. As it should. All right, so this is the photo that Ray, that started the conversation with Ray, because we've had this for a while, and I knew it was in the valley. This is the first Fortitude Valley Police Station, but we didn't know where it was. So Ray spent a lot of time digging down into the data he could find. My favourite person is you see the, stand out of the way, the young gentleman who got into the photo because he thought that was cool, I'm sure. So this particular image, we had to date from what the police officers are wearing. The station we think was rented about 1880, but we can't be precise about that. But because of the helmets, yes, and the uniforms they're wearing, it's circa 1891. And circa takes you 10 years back and 10 years forward, so it's a bit of a lazy way to date something, but that's as close as we can get. Oops, went the wrong way. One down. So that, this postcard that Ray found shows that building, the corner of Wickham and Alvin streets. I don't know whether I think it was the whole building, they were using the whole building, or whether they were just using the end of it for the police station. Again, it's a bit hard to know. If you walk down the street now, I did take a photograph of what was there now. It's a whole lot of shops. Oops, that stretch of Wickham Street is very modern these days, so you can't really appreciate, apart from the hotel, which is still there. Pubs and banks last through time, and I think pubs last a bit more readily than banks. So, All right, so in 1903, the old police jail or women's jail down on the corner of Brook Street, or actually it was in Church Street, the women were moved to Boggo Road Jail, and the police took over the old jail. That is a plan of the old jail, and in 1904 they moved in and it became the Fortitude Valley Police Station, so the second station. And they obviously made that area the reserve, which is why it is still a policing reserve today. I don't know how clear that is. We have some original plans and things, and they're hand-drawn, hand-painted on cloth, like linen and other strange substrates. And so this is actually dated 1892. So this is what the prison looked like. And they just did a few renovations on it. I'm not actually sure what they did to the building before they moved into it, but they moved in, they did. The Courier Mail, I think it was the Courier Mail, the Brisbane Courier did a great article, if you want to look at that online. And from this we get some good images of the facade of the building. Unfortunately, so just as a side issue, these police officers have letters and numbers on their helmets, and that was a divisional number, not the registered number. They didn't actually wear a registered number probably until about 1970s. So the Moreton area was an A, so all of these police officers will have an A and they will have a number. And then when they left the Moreton district and went, say, to Winton, and I say that only because I remember what that number is, or what that letter is for Winton, and that was F. So you leave your A number behind and you go to Winton and you get an F number, purely an administrative number. So that's what's on their helmets.
Why did they wear a helmet?
Or a hat. Well, their hats really, they're soft with some structure in them, but later they got a helmet. Helmets were then used for like outdoor traffic work. You know, they kept changing what they wanted the helmet to do. So Sub-Inspector Savage was in charge at that time, and then we have a photo here of all the police that were in the Fortitude Valley Station.
They're allowed to have facial hair then, weren't they?
The moustache was king, and beards were also big. There was no stipulation, as far as I know, about facial hair. That's a more modern thing. But these days you can have a tattoo as a police officer, as long as it's, you know, covered up. So the strictures are less these days. So in 1936, they built this station on the corner, which is the one that is still there, and it is listed, so it will stay. And when they added the new building around the corner, they put an attachment to it. So generally, the building is now has offices in it. It cost, let me just get this right here, £20,000, and it was officially opened on the 6th of July 1936. At the time, it was described as the finest, most up-to-date and most comfortable police station in Queensland. That's a politician talking for it. And a tribute to the enthusiasm and the work of Police Commissioner Carroll, up the top there, Inspector Arthur Bock and Sub-Inspector Charles Watson, who was in charge of the Fortitude Valley area at that time. Okay. I did promise some crimes, and this one I'd not known about. So this occurred in the valley. So in February 1956, 27-year-old Gwendolyn Dorothy Thorpe was murdered with a 45-kilogram piece of concrete. I'll show you that in the next picture. In a grass plot on Chester Street near the intersection with Doggett Street. She was, in fact, her house was on the other side of the block from where she was killed. That, I think it's about there. this spot here. Yeah. That is the block of concrete. Montague Davies was arrested for the murder. He was 36 years old and was given life imprisonment for the crime. Although if you read the newspaper clippings, of which there are, oh actually it's 56, so that's why there's not a lot of newspaper clippings on Trove. That generally stops about 1954. He professed his innocence and was very upset and overwrought during the court case. So now obviously we have the newer Fortitude Valley Police Station, which was 2012, and interestingly they reoriented the new PCYC, which now basically stands exactly on the spot of the old female jail and the second Fortitude Valley Police Station. I'm not sure that they know that. I should go and tell them, probably. It's still a pretty interesting walk if you want to walk around that area behind. All right, let's get on to New Farm. Police in New Farm. Now for some, I guess, we have a lot of police station histories in the museum. It's still got about 1,700 paper files and then another 1,200 digitised station files. And then you look and you think, I've had a notion over the last couple of years that we don't do the Brisbane stations very well. We do the regional stations really well. And I go and look in the New Farm file and think, oh, we don't have very much about New Farm, or there's less in there than I would like when you're trying to do a history of policing in New Farm. So when I search up histories for areas, I tend to use a couple of different resources to start with. So these obviously come out of the Queensland Police Gazette. So there's been a gazette since 1863. It's most interesting in regard to crimes and criminals and pictures of criminals up until 1974. Oh, I'm getting a drum roll. And after, just if you're interested, after that period, it only deals with staff movements internally. So that's how we find police officers in a more modern era. But you find these interesting snippets about people stealing things, and they go, they put lots of descriptions in there. I'm not sure if someone stole something from me that I'll be able to describe it as succinctly as they did back in the day. So this is prior to there being any formalised policing in New Farm, 1870. And yet lots of, in fact, I'm not sure I could describe somebody quite so well as they do in the Police Gazette. But literally there's hundreds. If I put New Farm into the Queensland Police Gazette, I will get hundreds of entries about thefts, missing people, obviously crimes, criminals, and movements of police officers as well. Oh, I put an arson one in there. I like the end of this. The detective police seems to be a doubtful case. I'm not sure that they went any further with that one. I like this photo. That's the only one I found online of New Farm. Perhaps somebody could tell me where we are in New Farm in this picture.
The house in the centre is on the corner of Annie Street and Kingsholm Street, running along like that.
Wonderful. Excellent. We all love these old photographs? Wonderful. Let's put that in there. Okay. All right. So in 1891, they leased a couple of buildings for a police station in Hill Street. Here's a frustrating thing about police files about stations, or maybe it's just a thing about the period, is that they don't put street numbers in. So I know it was in Hill Street, and it was 2 buildings, I think, on the one lot. So they had a police station and they had a barracks. And they leased it from William P. Black. And it was signed off by John Armstrong Lewis. Yep, so all we know is Hill Street. I'm assuming, which is possibly not the best thing to do, that it was closer in Hill Street up to Brunswick Street than it was further down. But and I don't know, is Hill Street still got some original homes in it? Yeah? Maybe I've got to wander back into the valley after this. Maybe I'll wander down Hill Street and see if anything rings a bell. So it's nice when you get a lease document, but they're not always in the file. All right, let's talk about how many police there were in New Farm. So the annual report for a certain period of time gives you districts, the stations within the districts, and tells you how many police and what sort of police are at each station. So New Farm had 1 senior constable and 3 constables in 1891. So at the period they put the police station in. And over time, obviously, the amount of police officers grows, and then the rank structure changes over time. So the first police officer at New Farm was James Montgomery. Got any relatives in there? Right?
Yes, that's
Oh.
that fellow that I'm talking about.
Oh, there you go. So if you have any police in your family history and you'll contact us and ask us about, we can put out these, what we call service histories, which detail ranks, when they join their ranks, and what stations they have gone to. And this is a letter that says when the station opened and that James Montgomery is the first police officer to be stationed at New Farm. It's nice when we can find out these things and have them verified. This is not New Farm. This is Roma Street Barracks, which no longer exists, unfortunately. But this uniform, which was made from navy blue serge wool. You're going, what? So hot and itchy and really uncomfortable. And here we go, illustrating the moustache. And the black helmet was in for a short time, and guess why they pulled it? Hot, and yes, there's a fair amount of heat stroke went on wearing this uniform in Queensland's weather, and this uniform was across the state until 1896, and then they had an epiphany and gave the country police a cotton uniform and a broad brim hat, but they were stuck with this uniform in the city until 1906. But I'm not sure that the material the next uniform had was any cooler than the one before it. I just found this last week. I thought it was hilarious. Is that not? And this is what leads me to believe that it's closer to the main Brunswick Street than further away. But that's just my assumption. But it is pretty funny. I wonder whether Inspector Lloyd actually managed to read it or saw it. They used to clip a lot of newspaper clippings that mentioned police and keep them. All right, so we have a database of police officers that lists from 1864 all the way through to 2022. So I can do a search for New Farm and output a list, and it's 134. And I still haven't finished actually going through it and finding out when they started and finished. So up till about 1940, we're pretty sure we know everybody's transfers and know when they were in and out of stations. And after, between 1940 and about 1970, we're about 50% sure. And after that, it gets very difficult to track modern police officers because of the way the paperwork is kept. Anyway, so here are a set. So Constable 1C and Senior Constable were kind of an equivalent rank. Sometimes they wrote it as Senior Constable and sometimes they wrote it as 1C. Just trying to think. They were all pretty, in this period, pretty quick. Didn't stay in the station. Peter Fay was there for a little while. And once you get down. So when we get to this kind of period, 1899 into 1907, they plugged in a sergeant. When I do this, I try and find photographs of police who were here in New Farm, and James Conway, we just happen to have a fantastic picture of him. I personally am in love with the moustache. Yeah. And I'm not sure whether he's wearing a police uniform there or he also went to the Boer War. And then there's a number of police who went to a variety of wars and then became a police officer, and then some of them around the period also went on to the First World War and then came back and continued to be a police officer. So interesting histories. All right, here we go. Here's the second mystery for you. In 1906, they rented from, where are we? They rented from a Mr. Rankin, a house in Brunswick Street. So it's not the plot that currently the new Farm Police Station or Scenes of Crime office currently sits on. Somewhere else in Brunswick Street they rented. So anybody who wants to try and find for me where Mr. Rankin had a house, that would be very useful to know. So that says, I beg to report that on Monday the 27th instant I removed from the premises in Heel Street, occupied as a police station, and removed into the premises in Brunswick Street, New Farm, which has been rented by the department. The key, and then he says he gave the keys back to the other building so he wouldn't get into trouble. But like I said, no addresses, just Brunswick Street. So it doesn't help us terribly much. I'm just going to find this. So, yes.
We moved to New Farm about 1974 or something, and the police station was in the house next to the Church of England, on the top side of the Church of England, and that's where the police station was the whole time.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. Thank you for that. I'll make a note. So when you get a police station file, you often also get inspection reports. And so an inspector would come to the station and make sure that you were doing your job right and wearing the uniform like you should, that the bookwork was in order, that the actual station was in good order. And it's a bit hard to get it clear because it's an old document, but the bit that's circled up there talks about the barrack accommodation. So this is 1914. It was a wooden building containing 8 rooms, kitchen and bathroom, detached building containing single men's quarters and 2 cells. But they're quite interesting. They're the most interesting documents you can find about the station because they talk about crime, they talk about the reserve, and if the crime rate's out of control, it talks about how that we need more police officers, or if the crime rate is really low, it might say we're going to close the station, and say, for example, if they closed New Farm, then Fortitude Valley would look after the policing. So dog stealing, there's a lot of dog stealing, and I just worry about why they were stealing the dogs. And you'll notice an interesting term that we don't really use very much even talking about dogs these days. I don't know whether if you breed dogs, whether you still use the term. Yes, but it's a nice... Oh, let me see, I found that photo online. I pinched it. All right, so this is 1916. So you can see by that point there's lots more police stations and New Farmers down the bottom here. And they have one sergeant and, does that say 5? I think it's 5 constables. So we've increased a little bit across that time. So police station files talk all about the station. So, and normally it's just correspondence about, this one for example is about another bathroom being required because the police officer has female children and he didn't want, the constables to be using the same bathroom as his family. So, but yeah, it talks about new windows needed, new lights. You can find out when they got electricity, when they got running water, when the sewage was connected. So you find out all those things. It's often when you go through the file, if it's been, I don't know, I think this was approved, this was okay, but other files you find they said no, and so they'd ask the next year no. So you get these multiple requests going through. I think that regional police had more trouble getting anything done than anyone else. So this is an attempted robbery under arms, which I thought was interesting, and it describes it as being at the corner of Hazelwood Street and River Road. Is that what Oxlade Drive was called? Yes, excellent, that's what I thought. So down here somewhere. Mrs. Harcourt ran screaming from the store. Yeah, so they didn't actually, he decamped out the back of the store and they didn't actually, I don't think they caught him. I didn't see another reference. All right, so now the station is going to be moved to the current location of the building that's listed, the one that's on the corner of, what is the street name? It's gone out of my head. Anyway, and that block belonged to the LeBroke brothers, who owned Cairnsville. That house obviously had a huge allotment around it, and the house was already, wooden house was already on the block. I don't have any pictures of the original house that was on that block. Well, not in my collection anyway, not that I could find. And in 1935, they were still in that building, and it was really getting to be dilapidated. So they decided to do some renovations and build the brick building that we see today, do the renovations. And it was, I think, the police station for a very long time. I think 1992, I think it was 92, when the Fortitude Valley district actually re-encompassed New Farm, and the police retracted from that building and went to the Valley Station. It is currently the Scenes of Crime office for the Fortitude Valley district. So you get Scenes of Crime officers. So they're the ones who come if your house has been broken into and there's no one still in the house. So you come home and find, you know, your handbag's been stolen or your bicycle's gone. The Scenes of Crime officers have the whole skill set of collecting forensic evidence, taking photographs and taking fingerprints. Only if it's a major crime will you get the Fingerprint Bureau coming out and the Homicide Bureau coming in, you know, for those sort of things. So they spent £2,788 on renovating the building in 1936. And then I've just found some newspaper clippings about, what's this one about? This is domestic abuse. I'm always interested to see whether we've got photographs of police officers. We have a lot of photographs. We hold all the police IDs back to about 1945. But prior to that, it's a bit hit and miss as to about whether you can find an image of a person. And thankfully, Trove often comes to the assistance of us. All right. So, anybody in the room remember the murder of Jack Henry Cooper? 1971. And I mention it because it has a New Farm connection. He was killed in Shand Street, shot. When he was driving home from the National Hotel, he was the manager of the National Hotel. If you want to know about this crime, you really need to read Matt Condon's books about the Fitzgerald Inquiry. It features heavily, especially the National Hotel. He was coming home, and there were the fruit boxes spread across the road. So he got out of his car to move the boxes out of the way, and he was shot multiple times. So let me just read this. How are we going for time? 10 minutes. Oh, fantastic. So on first glance, it appeared to be a truck crash without a truck. Timber fruit boxes were strewn across the road, and a large man's fully clothed and lifeless body lay nearby. The location was Shand Street, within a short walk to the victim's home, and the dawn light revealed a setup. Fruit boxes placed on the road to distract a victim who would stop to move them out of harm's way. Closer inspection of the crime scene discovered a homicide, bullet wounds to the victim, spent bullets on the ground nearby, drag marks in the dirt, the 6 fruit boxes, but the motive for the murder was a mystery at that point. A New Farm resident reported seeing a young man remove fruit boxes from the New Farm fruit and vegetable market. Do we still have a New Farm fruit and vegetable market? No? And gave detectives a description of the man and his vehicle. A similar vehicle was seen idling near the National Hotel where victim Jack Cooper worked on the night of the murder. Ballistics examined 14,000 cartridge cases and then identified the firearm used, which was a .22 calibre rimfire Armalite auto-loading rifle. It packed away into its own buttstock, and the rifle was used in the crime had been modified to work with a silencer. So whoever shot Jack Henry Cooper was really knew his business. Further investigations revealed robbery as a possible motive. The National Hotel was currently storing around $17,000, which is equivalent to about $173,000 today. So persistence paid off with extensive door knocking in New Farm, identifying a suspect with severe financial trouble and knowledge of the proceeds stored at the hotel after he'd stayed there occasionally. So Donald John Mayer owned a printing business and a sawn-off Armalite rifle. Lucky they found it. Initially reluctant to cooperate, he eventually admitted his plan to frisk Cooper for the National Hotel safe keys before accessing the safe to steal the money. The plan failed when he shot Mr. Cooper dead to retrieve the safe keys, and then found to his horror that the man had not been in possession of the keys on that night. Donald Mayer was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. It's one of the more interesting crimes, yes, but the National Hotel had an amazing reputation during that period. So I'm sorry about this, I've neglected to put in the python picture that was in the poster. But I found this recently. We also hold the public relations photographs for the police from 1960 to 2005. And so that's another way I can look up New Farm to find images. And I only found the 2. Now, I don't know whether these 2 officers are giving her the budgie or returning her budgie to her. Yeah, it's a mystery. Does anybody recognise the lady? Oh, anyway, maybe if we put it up online, someone will say, oh, that's my granny, and we'll find out why it was she was getting a budgerigar from the Queensland Police. 1985, that one. So that's dated about 1992, that image. I walked past it today and I didn't know, does it still have the police light out the front? This? No, I'll have. Well, I'm going to walk straight back past it again. I should pay more attention as I go by. It does have a police sign on it, I'm sure, but I don't think it's that one. So prior to the invention, this light came in the 70s. Before that, there was just like a big station sign, said police station on the building. So if you were coming and trying to find the police at night, only if you were local and knew where they were would you be able to find them. There was nothing lit up on the station until they introduced these lit up lights. It was just this bit to start with, and then they put a blue light on top which flashed as well. And as I said, it's now the Scenes of Crime office for the division. There you go, that's a quick and dirty. There's literally, if you wanted me to talk for a couple of hours, I could have. There's so many stories out there about New Farm and in the Gazette, and you know, the paperwork in the station file, but I thought I'd better hold off on putting it all in today. If you've not been to the Police Museum, we're at Police Headquarters in Roma Street. We are open 9 till 4 Monday to Thursday. We also open on the last Sunday of the month, and we have a lecture on those days. The September lecture is the OIC of the Mounted Unit is coming in. October we've got the, we're going to do kind of the history of the Pipes and Drums band, and the juvenile band's going to come and play some music for us. And in November, the Police Museum is 130, and so that I'll be doing that lecture at the end of November. That's the 26th of November, Treasures of the Collection. So talking about a few of the more interesting things we have in the collection, and there will be cake that day. So it's always best to advertise the free food early. Thank you very much.